We bring in Peter King from NBC Sports. Good morning, Peter. How are you?
Dan, he would have had 2 minutes, one timeout. All he needed to do was go 40 yards. And I don't mean that 40 yards is absolutely nothing against a decent defense, but come on, it's 40 yards. It's Aaron Rodgers. It's a timeout. And that is, if the Packers miss the playoffs by one game, which they very well could, looking at the difficulty of their schedule, they miss the playoffs by one game. Everybody in that building really is going to be thinking that Ty Montgomery cost us the playoffs.
But you can also go back to Matthews with the sack that was called, the penalty that was called, and that cost him a game too.
Right.
So they've had two games that they could have had in pocket, in hand here, and that would have been huge because you're not going to have home field advantage with the Rams and or the Saints. So it's going to be tough sledding, to begin with for that team. But do you think that Ty Montgomery was going to be traded prior to that kickoff? Do you think that his days were numbered in Green Bay?
Well, he had become RB3 in Green Bay. So if he had stayed, it would have been strictly for, I think, insurance, and he would have been a spare part. But certainly I think what happened on Sunday accelerated it.
I know the cameras are always on the star players, but Aaron Rodgers didn't hide his dissatisfaction. I mean, he was upset with it. Dan Marino used to do this all the time, and people would either say, "Well, he's a fiery leader," or "You know what? You're embarrassing your teammates out there." How does this play with Rodgers when he shows this kind of emotion, or he says what he has to say about the play calling in Green Bay?
I don't think he cares. I think he is so secure both in his job and in his position on the team that, I mean, in my opinion, I think Aaron Rodgers really had to swallow hard the other day when he met the press afterwards to not, I don't even want to say explode, but, and I think it sort of comes with, a long time ago, I remember Bernie Kosar, when he was, at the time, he was a very, very prominent player with the Browns. And I remember him saying to me, I made some comment to him like, you always say the right thing a half hour after the game when you stand there for 20 minutes and talk to the press. And he goes, that's the fifth quarter. And I said, what do you mean? And he goes, because when you're the quarterback of a team, everybody is looking at you. Everybody is listening to you, and you have to set the tone. In those days, what he said is, guys are going to read the paper the next day to see what the coach and the quarterback think and how we're feeling, and so we have to be good. We always have to be good, and I think it's incumbent on Aaron Rodgers to sort of skate on that line. But I do think one of the things that the Packers like about Aaron Rodgers, his teammates like about him, is that he's a no BS guy. And I was there the day in training camp where he called his wide receivers out, for running crappy routes. And so the only reason I bring that up is that I think sometimes when you skate on the edge of being critical of somebody, as Rodgers did after the game on Sunday, that there is this thing brewing inside of him that he's really ticked off.
Yeah, but I get that feeling that I know that the knee is not good and probably is going to need attention in the offseason. It just feels like that friction with him and Mike McCarthy is untenable. I feel like there's a divorce coming up here at the end of the season, no matter how this plays out. Your thoughts?
It could be. It could be. And I think that if the Packers don't make the playoffs, you're definitely going to have to watch Green Bay, because no longer is this status quo Ted. This isn't the Ted Thompson show. Brian Gutekunst, who likes Mike McCarthy, but I don't think is going to judge where they are as a team and where Aaron Rodgers is as he approaches his mid-30s.
Yeah, I had an NFL scout tell me yesterday that he sees this playing out with McCarthy ending up in Cleveland. With his relation,
I mean, a lot of people are doing 2+2 because Dorsey used to be there. But just remember one thing, and I'm not saying that it won't happen at all. Okay, it could happen, but I just remember one thing. McCarthy was not necessarily all those guys who were in Green Bay were Ron Wolf guys. John Schneider, John Dorsey, Ted Thompson. Those are guys who, were sort of, they went to the Ted Thompson school or the
Ron Wolf.
And I'm not sure that Mike McCarthy, that people look at the coaches who've coached there, Mike Sherman, Mike McCarthy, all that, as necessarily Green Bay guys, so to speak, as that it's convenient to link them, no question about it, because obviously they did work together. But I'm not sure it's a lock. I'd also look at places where John Dorsey really, really likes the football program, likes the coaches. There's no question he respects the Oklahoma program. He spends a lot of time there scouting, or has spent a lot of time there scouting. And I have no idea what his relationship is with Lincoln Riley. But Lincoln Riley appears to me to be a guy who's going to get some interest after this season, and maybe not just from Cleveland.
He's Peter King, NBCSports.com, NFL columnist, and you can read his great column. It's Football Morning in America every Monday, exclusively NBCSports.com. Yeah, the mess in Cleveland, why now with, firing both coaches, let alone just one?
That's a great question. I think it's because, and this, I think, says more about how the organization didn't like Todd Haley than it said about the organization's feelings about Hugh Jackson, because it would have been very logical to let Hugh go and to keep Todd Haley as the offensive coordinator with Greg Williams as the interim coach. But I think they felt like Greg Williams basically should be the head coach and didn't want to set the stage for any more friction than there already had been this year. And so it's like, Todd Haley doesn't play well with others. That's the storyline coming out of Cleveland. But I also think this, Dan, I think what happened on Monday is that Hugh Jackson wanted and felt like he should have till the end of the year, and that he should not have gone before the end of the year. And I think if he had his druthers, he'd still be there and Todd Haley wouldn't be. But I think they felt like, okay, you're 336-1. You brought in Todd Haley in the offseason. It didn't work, and you've got to pay for that decision.
Did you like the Rams move or the Eagles or the Texans better, if I'd mentioned just those three?
I like the Rams most.
Yeah, I did too.
Because, in my opinion, here's what this is. You have a supremely motivated guy in Dante Fowler Jr. who never has played up to his potential for a variety of reasons in Jacksonville, and now has 8 games and 1 playoff month to prove that he should be paid like a Myles Garrett or a premier pass rusher. He has not been that. And so he's going to be motivated in the next 3 months to play like the guy who was drafted so high. And that's why, to me, I look at this and I think that, especially because of what the Rams need, they need that edge rusher. And they have a very good defense up the middle. Obviously with great defensive tackles and Mark Barron, as a run-stuffing safety / linebacker, they need an outside rusher, and I think he's going to provide that.
What about the Eagles with Golden Tate?
Love that move, because I think Golden Tate felt like he was being underutilized. I mean, here's a guy who caught more passes in the last 4 years than I think anybody other than Jarvis Landry coming into this year, and he just wasn't used all that much. My feeling, Dan, is that Golden Tate is one of these. He's just a football player. He's an Edelman type. who just put him out there, and he's going to find a way to get open and get you yards. And I think Kenny Golladay had passed him in terms of the pecking order in Detroit, and they felt like he wasn't going to be back there next year. So I understand why Detroit did this, but the Lions' loss is the Eagles' gains.
Does Le'Veon Bell show up?
I mean, I don't know. What a totally ridiculous story. And, I mean, look, this is really the classic case, in my opinion, classic case of a player who sits out to force an organization's hands, and then the worst thing happened for him. The team not only got along well without him, they might have gotten along better without him than with him, because who knows what would have happened to the chemistry on that team. If he came in, when it was rumored that he would or he wouldn't. You've got a bunch of players there who I think are kind of bitter about him, because they thought he would be there at the beginning of the year. And so now, we'll see what happens. My gut feeling is obviously he wants to be a free agent, so he's going to come in sometime in the next week or so. But, I mean, it's a classic Parcells thing. They don't sell insurance for this kind of stuff.
Best trade rumor you heard?
You mean that didn't happen?
Yeah.
And that's why the rumors are rumors. I thought the Patriots might go get Janoris Jenkins. And I think the Giants really wanted to move Janoris Jenkins. But there was nobody out there who was going to take that money off their hands.
Yeah, I was told the Patriots were probably going to surprise people at the trade deadline, and then they didn't. Then I saw the Boston Globe where Ben Bolin said that they're probably stockpiling these picks because they're going to go perhaps all in on taking a quarterback in 2019.
Well, just think of this, Dan, that last year in April, in draft week, where was Josh McDaniels on Monday of that week? Josh McDaniels was in the home, I think it was somewhere in Texas, of Baker Mayfield. Yeah. And if the draft had gone differently, the Patriots might have, tried to move heaven and earth to move up to, let's say, 7 or 10 or whatever to get Baker Mayfield. Now, would they have? I don't know. But I think it's interesting. That came out draft week that McDaniels had spent some time with him. And, but I don't doubt that at all. They now have 4 picks of their own in the first 3 rounds, plus they will get a third-round compensatory pick for both the loss of Nate Solder and Malcolm Butler. So if you've got 6 picks in the top 100, which is what they will have, now all of a sudden it makes it possible, even if you're picking, let's say, 30 or wherever, I don't know where they'll be, if they're picking 30th overall in the first round, now you can package 3 or 4 of those picks, move up the way the Falcons once moved up 20 spots for Julio Jones. And you should be able to go up and get one of the quarterbacks, say in the top 10 of this draft.
Good stuff as always, Pete. We appreciate your time. Safe travels. Thanks for joining us.
All the best, Dan. Thank you.
Peter King, NBCSports.com, and his Monday morning quarterback. It's Football Morning in America, NBCSports.com.
For more Dan Patrick Show, tune to Audience Channel 239 on DirecTV or download the Dan Patrick Show app.